today we're going to do the one, the only uBlock origin. And already this video has gotten demonetized, except Google doesn't pay me squat. So we're going to do this anyway. The uBlock origin, run by Gore Hill, otherwise known as Raymond Hill. I love Raymond Hill is a guy who lives in Canada. He's an old curmudgeon.
Like me.
If you go on his Twitter, you can, which is over yonder, you can actually witness in real time the rants that he does, why Google is an awful, evil company. I mean, why Google is a company with lots of complex issues. He is a true saint. He needs to be applauded for his work. Let me clarify one of the first differences of uBlock origin, and I think this is a trap that a lot of people fall into, all right?
Ad blocking is the exact same thing as piracy. Literally the exact same thing.
And he even discusses it here, because I think it's a real thing. uBlock origin is not an ad blocker. Stop using ad blockers.
Let's get him, boys!
Hear me out. uBlock origin is a wide spectrum blocker, because the implication of an ad blocker means, oh, you can only block ads. uBlock origin is better than blocking ads, because uBlock origin also serves as your gateway into blocking the wave of malicious websites that exists on the internet. In a video we previously did about Firefox, I talked about how you should disable Google safe browsing because of what Google does to track people through safe browsing. However, if you use uBlock origin, uBlock origin's filter lists through things like Easy Lists or Easy Privacy or Peter Lowell's lists or the online malicious URL block list, these lists are text files, which you can actually just go and publicly view on people's pages or whatever. And what these are designed to do is they're designed to list categories of things that need to be blocked, and it's truly thankless work. In fact, it's such truly thankless work. Gore Hill has refused all donations to uBlock origin and says you need to donate money to the maintainers like Peter Lowell and Ming-Di Lum who need to continuously update their block lists so that the whole project can keep going. Because if it wasn't for these lists, uBlock origin flat out would not exist. In fact, a lot of these popular ad blockers, also use Adblock Plus or Adaway, for example, both of them rely on these filter lists. So really what you need to do, he says, this is what I mean by he's a real saint. He said, oh, free, open source, for users, by users, no donation sought. And he said, if you really want to donate money to and contribute to the people making block lists. And I think this is an unsung thing. I think it doesn't get talked about, like the maintenance that goes into ad blockers. And speaking of maintenance of ad blockers, this is the most important thing I need to bring up. Okay, uBlock, the first thing number one. All right, uBlock origin only works on Chromium-based browsers, so you can get it from Chrome, the Chrome Web Store, the Microsoft Store, and Opera add-ons. There's even some more installation methods or elsewhere. And Firefox. If you're using another browser, I'm sorry, your browser sucks. Just flat out.
But it only works properly on Firefox, am I right?
Yes, and now let's get into that little detail. And if you go to the releases page on GitHub, you'll actually see Gore Hill always puts this little comment here: uBlock origin works best on Firefox. And the description as to why it works better on Firefox is largely due to how Firefox's internal APIs for their extensions work. What uBlock origin is essentially doing to manage things like advertisements, it needs to intercept network connections, right? Essentially acting as a man in the middle between your web browser and you, to block out the stuff that you need. Because a lot of ad blockers they remove things from your view, but they don't actually do anything to block the network usage you take when you download like, I don't know, like this graph, for example, right? Because this is a picture, right? You can open this and it's a picture. But if you wanted to block it, uBlock origin actually blocks the internal network request for this graph to actually show up. And you can do the same thing on Chromium-based web browsers, but on Firefox, you can actually block what's called CNAME records. CNAME records are a part of DNS records. And what a lot of DNS services do is they use this to prevent people from actually looking at the sort of tracking that they're doing, right?
So on Firefox, it never even makes the DNS query in the first place
Right.
to look for
And
the thing.
Chromium browsers can't block this, right? So it shows here the example that the article that he links below here is, but when this request runs, it will then pull from this thing. So you could be on a website with no third-party tracking, but a first-party script will pull an iframe from a script that's designed to track you, for example.
So in other words, it's because websites know that ad blockers exist, they use pseudonyms, and uBlock Origin is smart enough to block the pseudonyms,
But only on Firefox.
but only on Firefox.
If you're using, this is why they, and Gore Hill, if you read his Twitter, has numerous opinions about Chromium as a web browser. But how do you get uBlock Origin? So if you go to this page, just click the button, you'll get it. So this is the example of the Firefox add-on. So I actually already have it installed. Just click the button, install it. You go to Chrome Web Store, you click the button, you install it. Just know you're getting a gimped version though. So here I have the initial menu of uBlock Origin, right? And through this menu is where you actually configure uBlock Origin. So you'll notice that there's a lot of checkboxes that might be a little overwhelming. So as we know, when we're configuring user interfaces, kids, what is the first thing we do? We go immediately to theme and change it to dark mode because we need to end the cancer that is light theme. I'm so done with dealing with light theme. All right, thing number one. I mean, you can configure other colors and stuff and whatnot too. And the next thing that I would strongly recommend new users check is check your filter lists, right? Because by default, uBlock Origin doesn't actually have a lot of filter lists enabled. So what we need to do is we actually need to go and enable some filter lists. A lot of people say, oh, you should go and check off all these boxes. You'll be okay. But the reality is you might not actually have to do that. There's a lot of redundancy in a lot of these check boxes. So you need to actually just be careful about what you actually enable, right? So the first thing that I would do is, in my opinion, when I actually go through a fresh install of uBlock Origin like I am right now, the first thing that I would do is I would enable the AdGuard user URL tracking protection. And if you click on this little info button right here, you'll see a little thing from AdGuard here about how their filters work. And if you click on this eyeball here, which is the coolest part of all, you can actually view exactly what this list is doing. And you can actually use this to cross-compare lists and see what you like and pick the ones that you like the most. But the reason why I pull out this list is you'll notice here, you'll see this line right here, which says remove param, right? The remove param query is a new feature in uBlock Origin, which allows you to remove ending things in a URL because this is actually and I'll give you an example of what this looks like without this protection, right? So if I go to imdb.com, everyone knows imdb.com. Let's watch Obi-Wan Kenobi because clearly that's what I want to do.
Hello
right?
there.
Notice at the top of this URL right here, you'll see this ampersand ref underscore hm hp whatever. This is an example of URL tracking, right? And by default, uBlock Origin doesn't block URL tracking. What you can do is you can check AdGuard's URL tracking protection. So if you check this box right here, so you can check the box. What this will do is this will put this list into action, right? So if I go to, notice how I do the search here where it says ref, right? You'll see here that there's a lot of URL trackers which use the word ref in them, right? So for example, GUCE referrer, right? This is an example of a GDPR referral link, right? And you need to, this is the kind of thing that you need to actually block, right? Because this is considered part of URL tracking. And by checking this box right here for the AdGuard URL tracking, you are essentially blocking this behavior, right? And that's just one list, right? There's a lot more complicated things lists can do. And I'm just sort of going to speed run through the next few because I think some of them are self-explanatory. So this is another one. Block outsider intrusion on the LAN network because, yes, did you know websites on the internet can try to interface with your local network? They have no business knowing what I do on my local network. So uBlock actually has a filter list here and this is uBlock and uBlock Origin's annoyance list. I haven't actually experienced any problems with it, so I actually just enable this. And the last one that I'm going to enable is what I do for my personal machine, but I actually have experienced breakage of this on particular websites. But I believe the benefit of it outweighs the downsides. So hear me out on this one. Enable easy list cookie. And you're like, what does that mean? Have you ever gotten tired of going to websites and seeing those awful cookie banners plastered on websites telling you need to agree to cookies, and then they track you anyway, even if you say no?
I haven't,
Well,
but I've never see them.
Well, if you go to check this box, you too can be like Windward and never see them ever again. And then the last one, this is mostly for international people, or if you're frequent websites of a different country that is not the United States of A or Canada, pretty much North America. What you can do is you can actually check boxes here, right? So for example, if you're a weeaboo, you check the Japanese box. If you are someone who's in deep trouble, you check the Russian box, and so on, right? And then uBlock Origin is actually kept automatically up to date. But I am OCD and I just check the box so you can see all the little loady bars load the text files that assemble uBlock Origin
loady
together.
bars.
Let's go back to IMDb. I'm just gonna go click on the thing again, right? And you'll now notice the ref link is gone. And that proves uBlock Origin is working. That is uBlock Origin in action. Go into some more complicated aspects, right? So let's go to one of the worst websites ever made. We're going to go to Bloomberg.com. Bloomberg has a sort of hard, soft paywall or something. For example, they're saying, your browser's out of date. But it's like, Bloomberg, we all know what you're really doing. I know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. Get out of here. You'll notice here in uBlock Origin, if you go to the menu, you'll actually see a lot of other things that are connecting. So I want to sort of dive into this and try to explain what's happening here. So you'll notice that in bold is the top level domain, right? So this is the website that you're actually connecting to, because believe it or not, when you connect to a website, you are not just connecting to one website. When you connect to a website, you're connecting to 20 websites. So you'll see here, we have adsafeprotected.com. This is actually being blocked. But you'll actually see a lot of requests in blue, right? And these requests that are in blue, these are the CNAME requests, right? So that Bloomberg's trying to do to, at least in some cases, to ease the burden on their website by out-hosting some of their stuff to a CDN provider, right? Because they want to reduce the load times on their website despite being a horribly bloated website. So the workaround is they outsource resources on their page to a CDN provider, right? So we'll see two examples of this here, right? For example, Fastly.net, right? So anyone who doesn't know, Fastly is actually one of the world's most popular CDN providers. And this is what a lot of bigger websites use as a content delivery. In CDN providers, they're a content delivery, or what stands for content delivery network, right? And a lot of websites use this because Fastly has servers all around the world. The idea is it's generally faster to deploy resources from Fastly than it is to deploy on, say, Bloomberg's own servers, for example, right? So you'll see another example of this here, right? You'll see Amazon AWS.com, right? Anything under AWS.com, that's another example of Bloomberg trying to offshore some of their CDN work so that they can load stuff faster. And you'll see, what's this? Location.bloomberg.com. Does that mean Bloomberg is tracking my location? Probably. And then what about privacymanagement.com? It's probably invading my privacy.
That's the one that's offering us privacy, right?
Of course.
Keeping us private by tracking us to make sure that we stay private.
So this is a warning that I want to give of uBlock Origin too, right? Even if you enable, like, you go through the filter lists, you check all the filter lists that you want. Even if you go through all of that manual work, this work of checking all those boxes, you will still get websites like Bloomberg, which generate trackers, which are still lit through, right? And but this is where things get even more complicated, right? What if you encounter a website which doesn't work? And this is an example of a website I know that I have had a lot of trouble with in the past, right? I'm going to use the Chinese website Youku, right? The Chinese website Youku is an example of a website which seems to at least struggle with some of their stuff, right? So for example, you'll notice here in uBlock origin, mmstat.com. mmstat.com is a common analytics service in China, and this is actually being used to track you. But you'll notice here in uBlock origin, right, that was in brown for a split second right there, right? You'll notice log.mmstat.com is in brown, but you'll notice it blocks everything else, right? So gm.mmstat.com is blocked because it's in red, right? Red is blocked, brown is partially blocked, and then green is allowed. And in my experience, it is very difficult to actually go to Yoku and watch weird people do things online, because they require you to do is you need to enable tracking. And even if you enable use uBlock origin like this, because even though uBlock origin is partially allowing this, the Yoku still will not work. And they'll actually block you and tell you your ad blocker, you need to turn off your ad blocker. And then most normal people are going to be like, sigh, I guess I must turn off my ad blocker, right? By clicking the big button right here. And then I refresh the page and allow Yoku to track me. The truth is, guys, you don't need to do that. The truth is, there's more to it. And this is where, remember what I said back at the beginning about how uBlock origin is a wide spectrum blocker? This is where this comes in. So before we continue, let me warn you by saying, if you are willing to tinker with your websites and override decisions that filter lists made for you, and you want to get around dumb stuff, like watch your Yoku videos while still blocking all their garbage ads and tracking, the one thing you can do is you have to enable advanced user mode. This is where we're getting into a little bit of the weeds here. You're like, how, and it says here, and it spooks you out here by saying, features suitable only for the most technical users. And they even give you like this little red warning here telling you, warning, advanced users are expected to read the documentation. It is important. But what this documentation doesn't necessarily tell you is what actually matters to a website before you just go willy-nilly blocking everything, right? And part of this also comes from experimentation and understanding how some of the internet is architected. So like, and this is knowledge that you accrue over time once you start to play with it, right? So how do you become an advanced user? This is all really spooky. How do you become an advanced user? You check a box. That's it. That's all you gotta do. If you go back to Yoku here, right, you'll see that there's a lot of stuff being loaded, a lot of things, right? And this is even with uBlock origin running, right? So, and you're presented with two options here, right? So you get the red option, and which is for blocking something, and the gray option. The gray option for allowing something, right? And then with both of these are what you use. So gray option will revert to what is essentially uBlock origin's default decision, right? So very similar to what you see when you run uBlock origin normally, not as an advanced user, right? But when you block something in red, so for example, you'll see here, what's a good example? Like Alipay, Ali app, right? I'm never going to use Alipay in my life, right? So one thing that you can do is you can actually click this box right here and block it, right? And what this does is this will actually block Alipay from this website.
So it only blocks it for this website. It doesn't block it across
so if
all websites.
Yeah, so if you use this left column right here, this blocks the whatever you click on this particular website, right? This is what's called the local column, right? And then the column on the left right here, this is the global column, right? And anything that's blocked in the global column is blocked everywhere. So let me give you a damaging example of what both of these actually look like. So
if you really never ever plan on ever using Alipay, you could block it in the left column, which blocks it across the whole internet.
Right. So another example, right? Akamai, right? Akamai is a very Akamai is a very popular, like Fastly, is a very popular CDN network. Akamai also sells DDoS protection to a lot of websites and provides a lot of third-party code to Apple and Microsoft, right? So they have very big business in actually integrating a lot of protections built into Windows and Mac OS, right? So one of the things that you can do is if you, let's say you block Akamai on Yoku, right? But if I'm checking it off in the global column here. I'm not recommending you do this. I'm just doing this to show you the destructive effects of what this actually does, right? But if you take block Akamai everywhere, if I go to outlook.office365.com, so this is the portal for Microsoft users who are part of, who have an Office 365 subscription. So if you go to this link, right, and I block it here, you notice that Akamai is also blocked here. But if you attempt to log in to your Microsoft 365 account here, it won't work because Akamai is implemented as part of Microsoft's authentication because they want to prevent people from bombarding Microsoft's website, like because they want to like do bad things to them.
So your account, the check for if you submit something to Outlook, it first passes through Akamai to make sure that you're not trying to DDoS Microsoft, and then Akamai passes it on to Microsoft.
In addition to a bunch of other stuff too, yeah. But
okay.
But that's an example of what this looks like, right?
So don't block Akamai.
Yeah, so don't block Akamai. Generally, whenever you see Akamai on a website, there's typically not much you can do about it. So I would actually just, like, whenever you see it, and if it is blocked, you should allow it, right? But Alipay, you can block that. Let's just block it everywhere. I hate Alipay. But the same is true here, right? Alibaba DNS. If you visit a lot of Chinese websites, you'll see Alibaba, because Alibaba is one of the most popular cloud providers in China. In a very similar way, right? I wouldn't block Alibaba DNS everywhere because they're one of the world's largest DNS providers and CDN networks. So like I wouldn't go blocking them, and especially because you can see them providing a lot of content for this website already. I mean, maybe block this one because you'll see, again, using our discernment as an advanced user, right? You'll see here, Alipay, Alibaba DNS is trying to sneak in MMStat right here, right? And remember what I said, remember what we did earlier about those C names, right? We got to block those here because I don't want those, I don't want the Chinese tracking me. All right. And to save your changes, so let's say I want to block, so let's review my changes, right? I'm blocking these queries that Alibaba DNS is making to mmstat.com, and I also want to block aliapp.org from tracking me everywhere, right? And to save your changes, you can click the lock button, and the lock button is going to make these changes permanent. So that way, whenever I come back to Yoku, these changes will be remembered and kept this way. And if you click the eraser, you'll notice that all the changes go away, so then you get a sort of fresh slate to work with, right? But I'm going to redo the changes and click the lock button again. Click the refresh, and then what this does is this actually does a soft refresh of the page. And then you'll notice here, we're back on Yoku, right? So here we are on a very innocent Yoku video. We don't need DRM to actually view this one because it's just a guy playing Minecraft. Okay, good. All right, be quiet.
Wow.
So this is an example of some of the here you can get the comfort of using uBlock Origin with your ad blocker and watching what you want, and at least blocking some of the invasive stuff that websites like Yoku or Bloomberg do to you when you visit them. Now, this can also be taken to an extreme, right? Because if you just use this right column, right, you need to repeat this process for every website that you visit, right? If I go to BuzzFeed.com, right, see all the trash that gets posted on BuzzFeed, you'll notice here, look at all of this garbage that gets loaded onto BuzzFeed. There's so much of it. So what's the very first thing what's something else we can do to block all this? I don't want to go and manually click on all of this stuff and just get rid of all of it because clearly it doesn't provide me any value to BuzzFeed, right? So one cool thing you can do is with uBlock Origin is you can block global elements of certain types for the whole page, right? So for example here, if you need to block first-party frames, so what does this actually mean, right? First-party frames are generally what's called iframes, right? The best way to view iframes are they are a website within a website. And you're probably like, I don't see iframes anywhere, Matt. What are you talking about? The most common one is if you look up YouTube videos, right? So if you go look up YouTube videos, right? The way DuckDuckGo actually implements this is when you click on this, this itself is actually an iframe into a YouTube link, right? So what DuckDuckGo is doing is you are visiting DuckDuckGo.com, but in DuckDuckGo.com, you are viewing YouTube.com. But one thing you can do is if you actually go back to uBlock origin, right? And you click watch, right? You'll notice that this YouTube video loads and it plays just fine, right? But one thing you can do is if you block third-party frames here, right? Click refresh. Now you'll notice I click all I want on this video and nothing's loading. And it's because it blocked all iframes. This is an example of blocking frames, right? But let's hop back to lay BuzzFeed, and I'll show you what this actually translates to, right? So let's say BuzzFeed inserts all sorts of dumb videos into their website, right? I don't want to see their stupid videos or embedded tweets. Boom. You block all third-party frames, goodbye, right?
Won't have to worry about embedded tweets anytime soon.
But let's go even further. Third-party scripts. So when uBlock Origin refers to third party, it's anything other than the website you're visiting, right? So you'll see all this stuff ending in BuzzFeed.com, right? This is in the case of BuzzFeed, this is the first party website. But when you use a third party website, that's everything else that's here, right? So you'll see BuzzFeed's Fastly connection here. You'll also see consensu.org, their GDPR tracking service, doubleclick.net, one of Google's ad services. Because I just went back from DuckDuckGo, improving.duckduckgo.com, because that's what DuckDuckGo does to see where people click on links. We got scorecardresearch.com, quantserve.com, and a bunch of other garbage, right? But I don't want all this stuff running on my computer. I just need to view the pictures on BuzzFeed and read the pretty words. So I'm going to block all third-party scripts. And now you'll notice that annoying top post thing got moved all the way back down here. Oh, that's funny. So now I don't have to see it anymore. And the page looks cleaner because BuzzFeed is trying to run all this JavaScript and failing. In fact, because it can't run these scripts, you'll notice that less things are showing up on here. And you'll notice how quickly this web page loads. So if I do Control-Shift-R, and it's Command-Shift-R on Mac, but generally if you do on Windows and Linux, it's Control-Shift-R. What this does a hard reload of the page. And notice, because you aren't running these third-party frames or third-party scripts, how much quicker BuzzFeed loaded compared to before. Right? This is one of the benefits of using uBlock Origin's advanced user mode. You can also, let's go even further. Let's block third-party scripts. I don't want to see first-party. I don't want BuzzFeed to run JavaScript, because when I click on this article, look, it's literally just pictures and text. What a concept, right? I don't need JavaScript to view pictures and text. You're just making it run slower. Look at all of this stuff that I just blocked, right? You wouldn't be able to do this if you were just using uBlock Origin normally, right? And a lot of ad blockers wish they could do something like uBlock Origin, because ad blockers suck. They wish they could do something like this. So go forth, armed with the knowledge that you can do all sorts of cool things of uBlock Origin. And
if you liked this video, click that tracking link at the bottom of the page disguised as a like button, and also that other tracking link disguised as a subscribe button. And if you didn't like this video, then you can block those elements on your page in the future.
Then you can also bend the knee to Sundar Pichai when you see him next week for salad.